The night was heavy and full of strange sounds. The human traveler walked slowly through the thick jungle, pushing branches aside with his hands. The air was damp, and every step made the ground soft under his boots. He had come this far looking for a shortcut to reach the edge of the valley, but now he felt something was wrong. The jungle was too quiet in some places, then suddenly too loud in others. He paused, holding his breath, when he heard it. A scream, not the kind of scream one expects from an animal, but a scream filled with pain and fear. It cut through the silence of the jungle like a sharp blade. His heart raced. For a moment he thought he was imagining it, but then it came again, long and desperate. The human froze. Instinct told him to turn back, to leave this dark path and head for safety. But something inside him, a voice that was stronger than fear, told him to keep moving. He knew this was not just any creature, it sounded like a person, or something close to it. He could not ignore it. He stepped forward carefully, keeping his head low. The trees around him were tall, their twisted roots forming strange shapes on the ground. The leaves above blocked much of the moonlight, but small beams of silver light broke through, guiding his way like faint lanterns. His hands trembled slightly as he pushed through the vine's dot, then he heard another sound drums. Slow, steady, and deep, as if echoing from the heart of the earth. They were not natural. Someone was beating them. The human's body tensed. He knew he was not alone here. He crouched low, listening carefully. The screams came again, this time mixed with a strange chanting. The voices were not human, but they carried rhythm and force. He did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Something dangerous was happening ahead. Fear pressed on him, but curiosity pulled stronger. He thought of turning back again, but the scream of pain pierced him deeper than any fear. Whoever it was, they were suffering. And he was close enough to help, or at least to see what was going on. He pushed forward, one slow step at a time. Each step felt louder than thunder in his ears, though in truth he moved with silence. He reached a thick wall of bushes and crouched behind them. The sound of drums grew louder. The chanting rose. Firelight flickered through the cracks in the leaves. His eyes widened as he carefully parted the bushes with his fingers. Through the gap, he saw a clearing. In the center, a great fire burned, its flames rising high into the night sky. Around it stood figures tall, strange, and frightening. Their skin was rough, some marked with dark lines like war paint. Their faces were sharp, with glowing eyes that reflected the fire. Each one carried spears and primitive weapons made of bone and stone. They were not human. They were tribal aliens, their bodies strong and their movements wild. But what froze the human's breath was not the aliens themselves. It was what they surrounded. In the middle of the clearing, tied to a wooden frame, was a girl. She was not human either, but she was different from the tribal aliens. Her skin had a soft glow, pale and shining under the firelight. Her hair, long and silver, fell over her face. Her eyes, wide with fear, reflected both terror and pain. She was young, fragile, and completely helpless. One of the tribal aliens shouted something, lifting his spear high. The others roared in reply. The girl screamed again, her voice sharp and heartbreaking. The human's chest tightened. His fists clenched. He had never seen an alien like her before, but he knew she was in danger. She was surrounded, trapped, and there was no one else here to save her. He leaned back against the tree, his mind racing. He could leave now, and no one would know he had been here. He could go back to safety and forget this nightmare. But the scream echoed again in his ears, louder than before, as if calling him directly. The drums beat faster. The chanting grew louder. The fire cracked, throwing sparks into the sky. The tribal aliens began moving in circles, their steps heavy on the ground, shaking the earth. The girl cried out again, pulling against the ropes that held her. But she was too weak. The human felt his heart pound harder and harder. He knew he had only seconds to decide. He stayed hidden in the shadows, but his eyes never left the scene. He studied every detail, the way the tribal aliens moved, the distance between them, the number of weapons. He counted them quickly, trying to find a weakness. 10, no 12 of them. Too many for a direct fight, but he also noticed something else. In their excitement, in their wild dancing and chanting, the aliens were not paying much attention to the forest around them. Their focus was on the girl, on the fire, on whatever ritual they were about to perform. The human's mind sharpened. He knew he could not fight them all, but maybe, just maybe, he could outsmart them. He crouched lower, his breath slow and steady. The jungle was alive with sounds again, crickets, rustling leaves, the distant call of strange birds. But for him, only the screams and the drums existed. And in that moment, as the fire roared higher and the girl screamed louder, he made a silent promise to himself. He would not run. He would not abandon her. No matter what, he would find a way. The part ended with the human's eyes fixed on the scene before him, his heart filled with both fear and determination. The jungle held its breath, waiting for his next move. The human stayed hidden in the shadows, his body pressed low against the wet earth. He could hear the fire snapping in the clearing, the tribal aliens chanting louder with each beat of the drums. Their rhythm was strange, wild, almost hypnotic. For a moment, he felt the vibration of the drums moving through his bones. But then another sound pulled him back, the broken cry of the alien girl. It was weak, trembling, and filled with pain. He forced himself to peek again through the vines. The firelight painted the entire clearing in shades of orange and red. The tribal aliens looked taller in the glow, their sharp shadows stretching across the ground like monsters. They moved in circles around the girl, some stomping their feet, others hitting their spears against the ground. Their language was harsh, full of growls and strange tones. The girl was tied tightly to the wooden frame, her wrists and ankles bound with rough ropes. Her body trembled each time the crowd shouted. She lifted her head for a moment, her silver hair falling aside, and her glowing eyes searched the crowd with fear. The human caught a glimpse of her face. It was beautiful yet fragile, glowing faintly as if her skin carried its own light. She was not like the savage tribe that surrounded her. She looked different, important. The human's thoughts raced. Why were they holding her? What did they want from her? This was no ordinary capture. It felt like a ritual. He could see symbols carved into the wood and stones placed carefully around the fire. The entire scene was like some kind of dark ceremony. Then, the largest of the tribal aliens stepped forward. His body was covered in markings, his chest broad, and his face hidden behind a mask made of bone. He raised his arms, and instantly the others grew silent. Even the drums stopped. The leader spoke in a voice so deep it made the air vibrate. Though the human could not understand the words, the meaning was clear. This was no speech, it was judgment. The alien girl screamed again, her voice carrying across the jungle. She pleaded in her own language, shaking her head, tears falling down her glowing cheeks. She begged, but the tribe showed no mercy. The human's stomach twisted. He wanted to run forward, to cut the ropes, to pull her away. But reason stopped him. 12 armed aliens stood there, ready to kill. If he moved without a plan, both he and the girl would die. He leaned back, gripping the small knife at his belt. It was useless against so many, yet holding it gave him courage. He whispered to himself, "Think, think. There must be a way." The leader raised his spear high into the air. The crowd roared, their voices rising like thunder. The girl screamed again, her body twisting helplessly. The fire burned brighter, the sparks shooting into the sky. The human's heart pounded so hard he felt it might burst. Then he noticed something. Just behind the wooden frame, half hidden in the dirt, a small metallic object reflected the firelight. At first he thought it was just a piece of broken weapon, but then he realized it was not tribal. It was smooth, polished, and glowing faintly with blue light. Something advanced. Something belonging to her. His eyes widened. The girl was not just a random victim. She carried something more, something that didn't belong in this savage place. The leader lowered his spear slowly, pointing it at the girl's chest. The crowd grew silent again, waiting for the strike. The human's breath caught in his throat. His hands clenched. He could not wait any longer. Suddenly, the girl's eyes locked with his. Through the shadows, through the fire, she saw him. For a moment, everything else faded, the chanting, the fire, the fear. Her eyes begged him silently. They said one thing without words. "Help me." The human's heart exploded with fire. That one look broke every chain of hesitation. He could not stay hidden. He could not let her die. He would find a way, no matter what it cost. He pulled back slowly, careful not to make noise. His mind was racing, searching for an idea, a distraction, anything to break the ritual. His eyes scanned the jungle floor around him, and then he noticed a fallen branch, dry and thick. He picked it up, rubbing it against the ground until sparks glowed faintly from the friction. His plan formed quickly. The tribal aliens were so focused on the girl that they had stopped watching the jungle. If he could light a fire somewhere else, create chaos, they would scatter. That would give him the chance to move. The leader lifted his spear higher, preparing to strike. The girl cried out one last time. The human knew he had only seconds. He crouched low, his hand trembling as he struck the branch against stone. Tiny sparks jumped, catching the dry leaves. Smoke rose, then flame. He pushed the burning branch into a nest of dry plants. Within moments, fire began to spread, crawling fast through the vines. The jungle itself began to glow with flames, the light reaching the clearing. The tribal aliens turned, confused by the sudden fire. Some shouted, pointing into the jungle. The leader roared, lowering his spear in anger. The ceremony broke into chaos. The human pressed himself against the earth, watching as the distraction took hold. The girl looked around in shock, her eyes wide. She did not know what had happened, but for the first time, hope returned to her face. The human's chest rose and fell as he whispered to himself again. "Not yet. Wait, just a little more." The fire behind him grew, and the aliens rushed to deal with it. For the first time, the ropes around the girl's wrists looked less like chains and more like something he could reach. The human's discovery was not only the girl, it was also the moment he realized that fate had thrown him into something far greater than himself. And, as the firelight spread, he knew this was just the beginning. The jungle burned slowly at the edges, smoke curling into the sky. The distraction had worked. The tribal aliens shouted in panic, some rushing toward the flames with buckets and hides, others trying to stamp out the fire with their feet. The drums stopped completely, their wild rhythm cut short by confusion. The human stayed low, hidden in the shadows. His heart was pounding so hard, he thought the sound would give him away. Sweat ran down his back as he gripped his knife tighter. The fire he started was buying him time, but only seconds, not minutes. The alien girl still hung tied to the wooden frame. She struggled weakly against the ropes, her glowing skin trembling under the heat of the fire. Her eyes darted around the clearing, and once more, for the briefest moment, her gaze landed on him. It was like a silent connection. She didn't know who he was or why he was here, but her eyes begged him again. The human pulled back, resting his head against the tree trunk. His mind was at war with itself. Logic told him to run. This wasn't his fight. He had no weapons strong enough, no armor to protect him, and no backup. He was just one man, standing against an entire tribe of hostile aliens. If he stepped out now, he would be killed in moments. But then he thought of the scream. That cry of pain that had pulled him deeper into the jungle. That voice wouldn't leave his ears. He remembered the way her eyes glowed with fear, the way she had looked straight at him as if fate itself had chosen him to be here. he whispered under his breath, "Why me? Why now?" His voice cracked with doubt. Another part of him answered, "Because no one else was here. Because if he didn't act, she would die." He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing slow, steady breaths. He pictured his own world, his people, his values. Humans were survivors, yes, but more than that, they were protectors. They could not turn their backs when the weak were suffering. That was what made them human. He opened his eyes again, sharper now, harder. The fear was still there, but behind it burned something stronger. Determination. The leader of the tribe roared, pointing at the fire. 2 aliens ran into the jungle to contain it. The others gathered close to the frame, guarding the girl. The ceremony had stopped, but the danger was far from gone. The humans studied the scene carefully. 12 aliens reduced to 10. Most of them distracted, their attention pulled between the fire and the prisoner. He counted the space between them, the rhythm of their movements. He needed to find the moment when their guard was lowest, but then a thought struck him. Freeing her wasn't enough. Even if he cut the ropes, how would they escape? The jungle was thick, but the tribe knew these paths better than he did. And if they caught him, it wouldn't just be his life, it would be hers as well. Doubt returned like a heavy weight. His hand trembled again on the knife. He thought about leaving one last time. He could turn back now, disappear into the jungle while the aliens fought the fire. No one would know. No one would blame him, but he would blame himself. For the rest of his life, he would hear that scream in his ears. The human gritted his teeth. "No," he whispered. Not this time. He slid the knife back into its sheath. He couldn't just run forward swinging. That would be suicide. He needed to use his strength, his mind. Humans were clever. They always found a way. He crawled along the edge of the clearing, moving like a shadow. Every step was careful, every breath controlled. The smoke from the fire helped him, covering his movements, masking his scent. Slowly, he circled closer to the wooden frame. The girl saw him again, her eyes widening. He raised a finger to his lips, a silent command for her to stay quiet. She nodded faintly, though her body trembled with fear. Closer now. The ropes were thick, tied with knots that looked impossible to break without a blade. He slid the knife back out, gripping it tightly. But just as he prepared to move, one of the tribal aliens turned suddenly, his glowing eyes sweeping across the clearing. The human froze. His body pressed flat against the dirt, his heart beating so hard he thought it would burst. The alien's gaze lingered, sniffing the air. For a terrifying second, the human thought he had been discovered. Then a loud crack came from the fire, and the alien turned back, shouting something to his tribe. The human let out a silent breath, his muscles shaking with relief. The choice was made. There was no turning back now. He would risk everything. He would save her, or he would die trying. His eyes hardened as he whispered to himself again, "This is it." The girl closed her eyes, tears falling silently down her cheeks. Unaware of how close help was, the human's body was tense, ready to strike, ready to act. The fire crackled behind him, the tribe roared ahead of him, and the jungle seemed to hold its breath. And in that moment, he understood something very clearly. This was not just about one girl. This was about something bigger. A test, perhaps. A test of what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of danger. He placed his hand on the rope, ready to cut. His heart whispered one final warning. One mistake, and you both die. But his spirit answered back. Then let them try. The risky choice had been made. The rope was rough beneath his fingers, twisted tight with knots that bit into the alien girl's wrists. The human pressed himself low, knife ready, but his mind screamed at him. If he cut now, the sound of snapping rope or the sudden movement would draw every alien eye. He had only one chance. He needed to think like them, not fight them. He pulled back, his breath shallow. His brain raced. 12 warriors reduced to 10, but 10 was still too many. He had to confuse them, split them, break their focus. He whispered to himself, "They see strength in numbers. I'll show them fear in shadows." The tribal aliens had returned to their chanting, though it was broken now, shaky. Some looked nervously toward the fire still crawling along the trees. Others glared at the girl as if blaming her for the bad omen. Their leader roared at them to hold position. His bone mask gleamed in the flames, his spear raised high as if daring the jungle itself to challenge him. The humans studied everything, their spacing, their weapons, the rhythm of their movements. Then he noticed something, a pile of dry ceremonial masks resting near the edge of the clearing. They were made of bark and feathers, trophies the tribe had not yet used. If those caught fire, it would send chaos straight into the heart of their ritual. But he couldn't simply crawl out and set them alight. He needed a chain reaction, something that looked supernatural, something that would shake their faith. His eyes darted to the glowing metallic object he had seen earlier near the girl. The strange blue light pulsed faintly, almost alive. He didn't know what it was, but he understood one thing: it belonged to her. It was advanced, not primitive. If he could reach it and use it, even without knowing how, it might do what he needed. A miracle in the middle of madness. Slowly, inch by inch, he slid along the dirt, using the smoke as cover. He moved closer to the object, every nerve on fire, every sound magnified in his ears. One alien turned suddenly, sniffing the air again. The human froze, gripping the earth so tightly his knuckles turned white. Seconds stretched like hours. Finally, the alien turned back, distracted by the fire's roar. The human's hand closed around the glowing object. It was small, smooth, warm to the touch. The moment his skin touched it, the blue light pulsed brighter. He almost dropped it in shock. The girl's eyes widened when she saw it in his hand, and she shook her head frantically as if to warn him. But there was no time to ask questions. He held it up, watching the blue light flicker. It hummed faintly, vibrating against his palm. He pressed it against the ground, and suddenly a spark of light shot out, silent, but bright as lightning. The light streaked toward the pile of masks. In an instant, they erupted into flame. The fire jumped high, swallowing feathers and bark, sending a shower of sparks into the air. The clearing exploded in chaos. The tribal aliens screamed in panic, their formation breaking. Some shouted that the spirits were angry. Others rushed to stamp out the blaze. The leader roared louder than them all, trying to hold order, but the sudden fire had spread too fast. The girl gasped, her glowing eyes fixed on the human, though she kept her lips sealed. For the first time, a spark of hope replaced the fear on her face. The human crouched low again, sliding the strange device back into the dirt beside her. He gripped his knife, moving fast. With one swift slice, he cut through the first rope. The fibers snapped clean. The girl's hand dropped weakly, but she stayed quiet, her breath trembling. The human cut another rope, his motions quick and precise. Each snap sounded like thunder in his ears, but the noise of chaos covered him. Another rope, then another. The girl's legs trembled as they were freed, but she stayed still, waiting. The leader suddenly turned, his glowing eyes sweeping across the clearing. His roar silenced the others for a moment. He pointed his spear toward the fire, then toward the girl, shouting something sharp and commanding. The tribe began to reform, their panic slowing. The window of freedom was closing fast. The human's hands worked faster, cutting the last rope around her wrist. The girl gasped softly as she pulled her arm free. She almost fell, but he caught her, steadying her with one hand. Her glowing skin burned faintly against his touch, but he didn't let go. "Run," he whispered, though he knew she didn't understand his words. Still, she nodded. They slipped back into the shadows of the jungle just as the leader raised his spear high again. The aliens cheered, believing the fire was under control. None of them realized their prisoner was gone yet. The human and the girl moved quickly, ducking low under vines, their steps careful but fast. Behind them, the chants rose again, but now there was anger mixed with it. The leader had noticed. A roar of rage shook the clearing. The girl stumbled, weak from exhaustion, but the human pulled her forward, whispering encouragement. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but he didn't stop. Every second mattered now. Behind them, horns blared. The chase had begun. The clever distraction had worked. The girl was free. But now came the true danger, escaping a tribe that knew every inch of this jungle. The human clenched his teeth, his arm wrapped firmly around her as they pushed deeper into the shadows. His mind whispered the same thought again and again. Don't stop. Don't let them catch you. And yet, deep inside, he also knew something else. The strange device, the glowing skin of the girl, the way the tribe feared her, it all meant she was not ordinary. He had stepped into something far larger than a rescue. The jungle ahead looked endless, full of dangers unseen. But he had made his choice. Now there was no turning back. The jungle came alive with the sound of horns and shouts. The moment the tribal aliens discovered the girl was gone, the entire clearing exploded in rage. Their voices rose like thunder, sharp and furious. Spears clashed against shields, and heavy footsteps shook the ground. The human pulled the alien girl by the arm, urging her forward. She stumbled, her legs weak after being tied for so long, but she forced herself to keep moving. Her silver hair caught the faint glow of the alien moons, her face pale yet determined. Behind them, the hunt began. The sound of branches snapping and leaves tearing filled the air. The tribal aliens were fast, too fast. Their guttural cries echoed through the trees, each one closer than the last. The human's lungs burned, but he didn't slow down. Every second they gained could mean the difference between life and death. Keep moving, he whispered, even though he knew she couldn't understand his words. Still, she nodded, pushing herself forward with all the strength she had left. The jungle was thick, the vines grabbing at their arms like hands trying to pull them back. Roots twisted beneath their feet, threatening to trip them at every step. Strange glowing insects buzzed past their faces, lighting the way for only a moment before vanishing into the night. The girl clutched her side, her breath ragged. The human glanced at her quickly. She was in pain, but there was no time to stop. He placed his hand on her shoulder, steadying her as they ran. Suddenly, a spear whistled past them, striking the tree ahead with a sharp crack. The girl gasped. The human pulled her to the ground just as another spear cut through the air above them. They rolled into the bushes, hidden for a moment. He placed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. The girl pressed close against him, her wide eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The sounds of footsteps rushed past, heavy and fast. The hunters were close, too close. The human held his breath, every muscle frozen. He could hear the aliens sniffing the air, their guttural language full of growls. One stopped so close he could see the firelight glinting off its weapon. The human gripped his knife tighter, ready to strike if discovered. But then a howl came from deeper in the jungle. Another alien called out, and the hunters ran toward the sound, thinking their prey had gone that way. The human exhaled slowly, relief flooding through him. He looked at the girl. She was shaking, her hands gripping his arm. For a moment, their eyes met, and though they couldn't speak the same language, they understood each other. They were in this together now. He pulled her up gently, and they moved again, this time quieter, weaving through the trees instead of crashing through them. He knew the tribe would not give up. They were hunters by nature. They would chase until either their prey was caught or the jungle swallowed them whole. As they moved, the girl suddenly touched his arm and pointed. Ahead, hidden by vines, was a narrow path. She shook her head toward the open trail they had been following, then tapped her chest and pointed again at the hidden way. Her meaning was clear. She knew the jungle better than him. He nodded, trusting her. They slipped into the hidden path, the vines brushing against their faces as they passed. The air grew cooler here, damp and heavy. Strange glowing plants lit the path faintly, giving the place an eerie, otherworldly beauty, but beauty could not distract from danger. In the distance, the horns blared again. The hunters were splitting into groups, spreading out to cover more ground. The human's stomach tightened. They were clever too. The girl stumbled again, nearly falling. He caught her in his arms, lifting her for a moment. She was lighter than he expected, fragile, as if she had not eaten for days. Her eyes closed briefly, her face pale with exhaustion. He whispered to her softly, "Stay with me." Just a little longer. She opened her eyes again, and for the first time, there was no fear in them, only trust. Suddenly, a howl cut through the air behind them, closer this time. The human's heart raced. They had picked up the trail again. He carried her as far as he could, then set her down gently, urging her to run beside him. Their steps echoed in the night, the jungle alive with danger. The path ahead opened into a ravine, a drop too steep to climb down quickly. He cursed it under his breath. Behind them, the hunters' torches glowed like angry stars moving closer through the trees. The girl touched the glowing device at her side, the counters, same one he had used earlier. She tapped it twice, and suddenly the air shimmered near the ravine wall. A small section of stone glowed, revealing a hidden passage carved deep into the rock. The human stared in shock, but she tugged at his arm, urging him forward. Without hesitation, they slipped inside. The stone shimmered closed behind them, leaving only silence and darkness. Outside, the hunters roared in anger, their footsteps stopping at the ravine. They had lost the trail again. Inside the hidden tunnel, the human pressed his back against the wall, his chest heaving, his arm still protectively around the girl. The space was narrow, the air damp, but it was safe for now. The girl leaned against him, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. Her glowing eyes looked up at him, soft and grateful. For the first time since the chase began, the human allowed himself a single thought of relief. They had survived the night's first hunt, but in his heart, he knew it was not over. The tribe would not stop. And whatever secrets the girl carried, they were only beginning to reveal themselves. The tunnel was narrow and damp, its stone walls covered with moss that glowed faintly in the dark. The human pressed forward slowly, his arm still around the alien girl, guiding her carefully. Each step echoed softly, as if the passage itself was listening. Behind them, faint roars echoed from the jungle, but the sound was fading now. The tribe had lost the trail, at least for the moment. The girl stumbled, her body weak from exhaustion. The human stopped, lowering her gently onto a smooth rock. She leaned against the wall, her breath uneven, her silver hair falling across her glowing face. For the first time since the chase began, they had a chance to breathe. The human knelt in front of her, studying her closely. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, and the strange device at her side still pulsed with soft blue energy. He had so many questions burning inside him, but none of his words would reach her. Still, he had to try. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice low but steady. The girl blinked, her eyes locking with his. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. Slowly, she raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. Then she pointed upward, toward the ceiling of the tunnel, as if pointing to the sky itself. The human frowned, trying to piece it together. She wasn't just from this jungle. She wasn't just another tribe. She was from somewhere higher, greater. She touched the glowing device again, her fingers brushing against its surface. The blue light flared brighter, and suddenly an image appeared in the air above it. The human gasped. It was a projection shimmering shapes made of light. He saw a massive city floating among the stars, towers stretching higher than mountains, ships moving like silver birds across the sky. It was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Beautiful, advanced, otherworldly. The girl's voice trembled as she spoke in her language, her words soft but urgent. Though he could not understand, her tone carried meaning. She pointed at the city in the projection, then at herself. Finally, she pointed at the ground beneath them, her expression dark. The human's mind raced. She was from that city. A place beyond the jungle, beyond this world even. And now she was here trapped, hunted, nearly sacrificed. She shifted the image again. This time, he saw beings dressed in flowing robes, their faces wise and calm. Then the image changed once more, showing the tribal aliens. But in this vision, they were kneeling in fear, not roaring in triumph. The message was clear. The girl was not just anyone. She was important. She was someone the tribe wanted to destroy, or perhaps silence. The human swallowed hard. He finally understood. She was not just a victim. She was someone of power, of lineage, maybe even royalty. And saving her was not just saving one life, it was stepping into a storm that could change everything. The girl's eyes shimmered with tears. She touched the projection one last time, and the image faded away. Her body shook as she looked at him, her lips moving to form words she hoped he might understand. She whispered softly, "Help." "May." The human felt his chest tighten. That single word, broken but clear, was enough. She had tried so hard to reach across the barrier of language, and now her plea struck deep into his heart. He nodded firmly. "I will." His voice was steady now, no hesitation. She studied him for a moment, then gave a faint smile, the first he had seen on her face. It was small, fragile, but it carried trust. Suddenly, the ground shook. A rumble echoed through the tunnel, dust falling from the ceiling. The human snapped his head around, listening carefully. The tribe hadn't given up. They were trying to collapse the tunnels, to trap them inside. The girl placed her hand against the stone wall, and the device at her side pulsed again. A section of the wall glowed, revealing another hidden door. She motioned for him to follow, but her steps were weak. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms, carrying her forward. The new passage opened into a cavern so wide, it felt like stepping into another world. Glowing crystals lit the space, reflecting across a pool of clear water in the center. Strange symbols covered the walls, carved long ago. The girl's eyes widened as she looked around, recognition flashing in her gaze. She whispered something again, her tone reverent. She pointed at the carvings, then at herself. The human realized this was no ordinary cave. This was sacred to her people. Perhaps it was even meant to protect her. He set her down gently by the water's edge. She dipped her hands into the glowing pool, drinking carefully. Her strength returned slightly, color warming her face again. She motioned for him to drink as well. He hesitated, but then lowered his hands and tasted the water. It was cool, refreshing, unlike anything he had drunk before. His body felt lighter, stronger, as if the pool itself carried life. The girl looked at him with serious eyes now. She touched his chest, then touched her own. Then she raised both hands, bringing them together as if to show unity. The meaning was clear. Whatever danger lay ahead, they would face it together. The human nodded again. He didn't need more words. The bond was already there. But before they could rest, another roar echoed through the cavern. Torches flickered at the entrance. The tribe had found them again. The girl stood, weak but defiant, her glowing skin shimmering brighter now. The human stepped in front of her, knife in hand, ready to fight. He finally understood the hidden truth. This girl was not just someone to save. She was someone worth protecting at any cost, because her survival meant more than either of them yet realized. And as the shadows of the tribe poured into the cavern, he prepared himself for the fight that would decide everything. The cavern trembled with the sound of war cries. Torches flared as the tribal aliens poured through the entrance, their glowing eyes fixed on the human and the girl. Their leader stepped forward, the bone mask shining in the firelight, his spear raised high. His voice roared across the chamber, full of rage and certainty. To him, the hunt was almost over. The human tightened his grip on his knife. His body shook with exhaustion, but his eyes burned with determination. He stood in front of the girl, shielding her with his frame, even though he knew he was only one man against an army. He whispered to her without looking back, "Stay behind me." The girl's glowing skin brightened faintly, her hands trembling as she clutched the strange device at her side. She knew he was willing to die for her, but she also knew something he did not. They were not alone anymore. The tribal aliens advanced, their feet pounding against the stone, their chants echoing like thunder. The human braced himself, raising his knife though it looked small compared to their spears and blades. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, fear replaced now by resolve. But then it happened. A deep vibration shook the ground, stronger than before. Dust rained down from the cavern ceiling, and the glowing pool rippled violently as if reacting to something above. The aliens stopped suddenly, their chants faltering. Confusion flickered across their savage faces. The girl raised her head, her glowing eyes wide with hope. She pressed the device against her chest, and it pulsed brighter, releasing a sharp beam of blue light that shot straight upward through the stone ceiling. The entire cavern lit up as if a second sun had been born underground. The aliens stumbled back, shouting in panic. The leader roared in defiance, but even his voice carried doubt. Moments later, the ceiling split with a deafening crack. Blinding white light poured in as the stone shattered. The human shielded his eyes, his heart pounding with shock. Through the dust and brilliance, shapes began to descend. Not birds, not meteors, ships. Three massive vessels cut through the sky, their silver hulls gleaming, engines humming with power far beyond anything the tribe had ever seen. They hovered above the jungle, beams of light searching the ground, shaking the earth with their presence. The aliens cried out in terror. Some dropped their weapons, others ran toward the cavern entrance, desperate to escape. But there was nowhere to run. The sky itself had turned against them. The ships released smaller crafts that glided down with perfect grace. They landed at the cavern's mouth, their doors opening with a hiss. Figures stepped out tall, regal, and armored in silver and white. Their eyes glowed faintly like the girl's, their movements calm and commanding. The girl gasped softly, tears spilling down her cheeks. She whispered a single word in her language, her voice trembling with relief. These were her people. The human stood frozen, his knife still clutched in his hand. He had expected death tonight, but instead he was witnessing something he could hardly believe. Leader of the tribe tried one last time to rally his warriors. He raised his spear and screamed defiantly, pointing it toward the girl. But before he could charge, a beam of light shot from one of the ships above, striking the ground in front of him. The stone cracked, the heat scorching. The message was clear: stop or be destroyed. The leader faltered, his mask shaking. For the first time, he looked small. The alien soldiers stepped forward in silence. Their presence alone was enough to scatter the tribe. The warriors fled into the jungle, their cries fading into the night. Only the leader remained, trembling, his spear lowering as his courage collapsed. The girl stepped forward now, though her legs were weak. The human moved to support her, but she shook her head gently. She wanted to stand on her own. Her glowing eyes fixed on the leader, no longer filled with fear, but with strength. She spoke in her language, her voice calm but powerful. The leader dropped his spear, falling to his knees, his mask clattering onto the stone floor. The fight was over. The alien soldiers approached her, bowing their heads in respect. One of them spoke softly, placing a hand on his chest in salute. The girl nodded, then turned toward the human. He stood there, still gripping his knife, his clothes torn, his body covered in dirt and sweat. He felt out of place among these shining figures of power. But the girl's eyes never wavered from him. She walked to him, placing her glowing hand gently on his chest. Then, in halting words, she whispered in his language, "Courage." "Human." The soldiers turned their gaze to him, their expressions shifting to something unexpected respect. One of them even bowed slightly, a gesture that stunned him more than any ship in the sky. The human swallowed hard, unsure of what to do. He had not saved her for recognition. He had not fought for honor. He had acted because he could not ignore a scream for help. Yet here he was, standing in front of a girl whose people commanded ships that shook the stars. And they looked at him not as prey, not as outsider, but as equal. The girl smiled faintly through her tears. Her people had come for her, but tonight, they had also seen something greater, that they had seen what it meant to be human. The ships above hummed louder, their lights flooding the jungle, their shadows stretching far. The human stood taller now, the knife still in his hand, but his heart lighter than ever before. He had faced fear, he had chosen courage, and now, even among the stars, humanity's strength would not be forgotten. And as the tribal leader knelt in silence, the girl whispered one last promise to him, her voice steady. Together, the unexpected had arrived, and the universe would never be the same again.